My name is Bran, Assessor Bran, if you want the full title, and I do enjoy the full title, thank you. I serve the Galactic Trial Commission, which is a fancy way of saying I sit in a comfortable chair, sip warm nutrient broth, and watch other species die in creative ways. It is steady work. The benefits are excellent, and until recently it was the kind of job that let me feel very, very smug about the universe and my place near the top of it. Now the trial. Let me explain the trial, because you will need to understand the rules to appreciate exactly how thoroughly I was humbled. Every species that wishes to join the Greater Compact must first pass the crucible. It is tradition, it is law, and, between you and me, it is also excellent entertainment. The arrangement is simple. We take one candidate, a single representative of an entire species, chosen to prove that their kind is worth a seat at the table. We offer them 100 tools, 100 shields, drones, blades that hum with plasma, suits that laugh at acid and cold, medkits that can stitch a severed limb back on while you nap, anything a fragile organism could possibly want to survive a hostile world. Take what you wish, we tell them, choose wisely, and then we drop them onto the crucible and we watch. But Crucible is not a kind place, I want to be clear about that. It is a world we engineered specifically to be cruel. Acid rains from a green sky. The nights freeze flesh to stone. The predators were selected for appetite and patience, and the apex among them, well, we will get to him. He deserves his own paragraph, frankly. He has earned it with blood. In all my years of service, I had watched candidates from 41 species enter the selection chamber. And do you know what every single one of them did? Every single one? They grabbed everything. It was almost beautiful. In a pathetic sort of way. They would scuttle up to the tool wall, eyes wide, and they would snatch and hoard and stuff their packs until the seams strained, clutching their 100 gleaming treasures like frightened younglings clutching a parent's leg. And then they would step into the crucible, armored in technology, drowning in advantages, and most of them died anyway, slowly, expensively, with all their wonderful gear scattered around their cooling bodies like party decorations. We had a saying in the commission, tools do not make the creature. We said it often, we nodded sagely when we said it, and then we never once believed it. Not really. We thought we were so clever for noticing the irony. We had no idea. So, there I was, on the morning everything changed, settling into my chair with my broth and my smugness, ready to watch the latest hopefuls fail. And on the docket that day was a new species, a young one, recently spacefaring, barely out of their own gravity well, soft and slow and unremarkable by every measurement we bothered to take. They called themselves humans. I remember laughing when I saw the file. I actually laughed out loud, broth nearly coming out my breathing slits. Average physical strength, no natural armor, no claws worth the name, no venom, no shell, no second heart, no regenerative tissue. Their senses were mediocre. Their lifespans were short. On paper they were the most aggressively average species ever to apply, the kind of creatures you would expect to find as prey on some quiet little world, not as applicants to the Greater Compact. This one will be quick, I told Director Veska, who sat to my left. Veska, who has all the warmth of a frozen rock and twice the patience, did not even look up. They are all quick, she said. Some are just more entertaining about it. Oh, Veska, you had no idea either. None of us did. And then the chamber doors opened and the human walked in, and I want you to understand that I have replayed that walk in my mind 1,000 times since. His name was Eli Dorn. He was not large. He was not impressive. He had 2 arms, 2 legs, a face that did nothing remarkable, and a pair of those small flat eyes that humans have, which I had always found a little unsettling, like being watched by something that was thinking and refusing to tell you about it. He wore plain clothes, he carried nothing, and he walked into a chamber designed to overwhelm and intimidate any living thing, and he did not slow down, he did not gawk, he did not tremble. He just walked, calm, unhurried, the way you might walk into a room you had visited 100 times before. Look at him, I said, and I will admit there was a sneer in my voice. He doesn't even know to be afraid. Give him a moment, Veska murmured. The wall always humbles them. The wall. The wall. Let me tell you about the wall, because it is genuinely a magnificent piece of theater. 100 tools, arranged in gleaming rows across a curved expanse of polished metal, each one lit from within, each one humming softly with promise. Energy shields that could turn a falling boulder into a gentle breeze. hunter drones that tracked prey through solid rock, medbays the size of a fist that could resurrect you from the very edge of death, climate suits, plasma blades, sonic deterrents, signal beacons, water reclaimers, oxygen forges, a buffet of survival, a cathedral to staying alive. Every candidate before Eli had stood before that wall and felt their knees go weak with greed. Technician Pohl, our procedures officer, a nervous little fellow who took rules far too seriously, stepped forward to recite the offer. "Candidate," he said in his careful, formal way, "you may select up to 100 tools to aid your survival within the crucible. Choose wisely. Your selection is final. Your life may depend upon it." And here is the part where, normally, the candidate lunges for the wall. Eli Dorn did not lunge. He stood there. He looked at the wall, slow and easy, his flat eyes moving across all that gleaming abundance. He took it all in. The shields, the drones, the blades, 100 ways to cheat death, laid out for the taking. And his expression, I swear to you, his expression did not change at all. He looked at 100 miracles the way you might look at a wall of identical gray rocks. Then he reached out. I leaned forward in my chair. We all did. This was the moment. This was where they revealed their nature, in what they grabbed first. His hand passed over the plasma blade, passed over the shield, passed over the medkit, the drone, the suit, all of it. And it came to rest, at the very end of the wall, on the cheapest, dullest, most laughably primitive object we kept on display as a sort of joke. A simple knife, a flat wedge of metal with an edge and a handle. No power cell, no display, no clever little lights, the kind of thing his own ancestors had probably been making out of sharpened stone before they ever saw a star up close. He picked it up, he turned it over once in his hand, testing the weight, the balance, like a creature greeting an old friend, and then he turned and he walked toward the drop pod. One knife. Nothing else. And not another word. The chamber went silent. I mean truly silent, the kind of silence that has weight to it, that presses against your ear membranes. Pohl's mouth hung open. Veska's frozen rock composure cracked just enough for one eyebrow to climb. And me, I sat there with my broth halfway to my mouth, certain that I had misunderstood, certain there had been some malfunction, some mistake, some part of the procedure I had blinked through. "Did he?" I started. "He took the knife," Veska said. "Only the knife. Only the knife." And then, from somewhere across the observation deck, somebody laughed. And then somebody else. And then the whole room was rolling with it, that warm, cruel laughter of a crowd that has just been handed the funniest thing it has seen in years. Ha! The human, the soft, slow, unremarkable human, had walked past 100 miracles to choose a sharpened scrap of metal, and was now strolling towards certain death with the casual confidence of a creature going out to fetch the morning post. I laughed, too. I want that on the record. I laughed the loudest. Because in that moment it was the most ridiculous thing I had ever witnessed, and I had no reason in the universe to suspect that the joke was in fact me. Up on the observation deck, the betting started before the drop pod had even sealed. You must understand, we are professionals on the commission, dignified servants of an ancient institution, and naturally we gamble on the deaths of the candidates like spectators at a blood sport. It is tradition. Do not judge us. Actually, judge us a little. We had it coming. Elder Tamak, the oldest of us, a creature so wrinkled and ancient that he predated half the laws we enforced, settled into his seat beside me with a low rumble that passed for a chuckle. "I give the soft one 10 minutes, he said. 10? Veska scoffed. "You are generous, old one. He has a knife. A knife. I give him 5. 5 is cruel, I said, grinning. Let the creature have his dignity. 8 minutes. He freezes, or something with teeth finds him, and we all go back to lunch. Pohl, who did not gamble because the rules technically forbade it, and Pohl would sooner chew off his own limb than break a rule, hovered anxiously behind us. The record for shortest survival, he offered, is 4 minutes, held by the Threlic candidate who selected only a shield, and stepped directly into a tar sink. 4 minutes. Tomek's old eyes glittered. Now there is a record worth chasing. Care to make it interesting? We made it interesting. Broth rations leave days, the good seats for the next 40 trials, all of it tossed onto the table with the easy generosity of creatures who were absolutely certain how this would end, because we had seen it 41 times. The strong died, the armored died, the clever ones with their 100 tools died. So what hope, what flicker of a chance, did a soft little creature with a single dull blade possibly have? You know what his problem is, I said, gesturing at the screen where the drop pod was descending through the green murk of the crucible's atmosphere. His problem is that he does not understand the situation. He thinks this is a test he can pass with cleverness. He thinks he is special. I took a satisfied sip of broth. Every species thinks it is special, right up until the moment the crucible explains otherwise. The crucible is a patient teacher, Tomak agreed. And a thorough one, said Veska. We clinked our cups. We laughed. We were so comfortable, so warm, so utterly gloriously wrong, sitting there in our soft chairs, looking down at a creature we had already buried in our minds. I want to remember us exactly like that, because we never got to be that comfortable again. The pod struck the surface of the crucible with a hiss of steam, and the door fell open, and Eli Dorn stepped out into a world built to kill him. The first thing the crucible does to a candidate is announce itself. The acid sky boiled overhead, that sick churning green, and a fine corrosive mist hung in the air, the kind that itches first and burns later. The temperature on the readout was already sliding toward the killing cold, and out across the broken landscape, in the rocks and the twisted vegetation, a dozen sets of eyes were already turning toward the smell of fresh, unarmored prey. A normal candidate, even one drowning in tools, would have panicked here. We had watched it happen 41 times. The shoulders climb up toward the ears, the breathing goes quick and shallow, the eyes start jumping from threat to threat, faster and faster, until the creature is so busy being afraid that it forgets to be alive. Eli Dorn did not do this. He stepped out of the pod, and he stopped, and he simply looked. Slow, methodical. His flat eyes moved across the landscape, not in panic but in assessment, the way a builder looks at an empty lot. The sky, the ground, the slope of the land, the dark line of a ridge to the west, a stand of those twisted black trees, a glitter of moisture in a low place that might be water, or might be something far worse. He read the whole murderous panorama like a page of text, and then he nodded to himself, just once, a small private gesture, as if the world had told him exactly what he needed to know. What is he doing? Veska asked. Freezing, I said confidently. Watch. The cold gets them every time. He will be a statue inside of 6 minutes. But Eli was already moving, not running, not fleeing, just walking, with that same unhurried economy he had shown in the chamber, straight toward the dark ridge in the west. And as he walked, his hand came up, and he began to work. He cut a length of the black, tough vegetation, stripping it with 2 quick passes of the knife. He gathered fibrous bark. He bent and pried a flat stone loose from the ground. He did not stop walking while he did any of this. He collected as he traveled, the way a creature collects who has done this 1,000 times and does not need to think about each step. By the time he reached the ridge where a shallow overhang of rock offered a break from the acid mist, he had an armful of material and a plan already finished in his head. I stopped laughing somewhere around the 8-minute mark. I noticed it later, the absence of my own laughter. I had been so sure he would be frozen by now, and instead beneath that overhang he was building. He wedged the flat stone to make a windbreak. He arranged the dry inner bark into a small careful pile. And then he took the knife, our cheap joke of a knife, and he struck it against a piece of the dark stone, and a spark leapt out, caught the bark, and grew. Fire. He made fire. With a knife and a rock and a handful of dead plant matter, on a world we had specifically designed to deny warmth to the dying. He crouched beside the small flame, feeding it, coaxing it, his face lit orange in the gathering dark, and the temperature read out on our screen stopped its slide toward death and held, and then began, slowly, to climb. The observation deck had gone very quiet. He made fire, Pole said, in a small voice. I have never seen a candidate make fire. It is a fluke, Veska said. But she did not sound certain anymore. The first night of the Crucible has killed more candidates than every Predator and Acid Storm combined. The cold comes down like a hammer. The dark is total. And out in that dark the things with teeth come hunting because they know the cold will have made the prey slow and stupid. 41 candidates had faced their first Crucible night. Many of them had not faced a second. Eli Dorn faced his first night beside a fire he had built with his own hands, with a windbreak at his back and the warm rock at his side, and when a low shape detached itself from the darkness and came creeping toward the light, drawn by the smell of him, he did not scream and he did not run. He simply rose, knife in hand, and he met its eyes across the fire, and something in the way he stood, calm and ready and entirely unafraid, made the creature reconsider its evening. It slunk back into the dark. It chose easier prey. The sun came up green and sick over the crucible, and Eli Dorn was still alive, still warm, still working. Nobody on the observation deck said a word about the bets. The days that followed were, for me, an education I did not ask for and could not refuse, because Eli Dorn did not simply survive the crucible. He moved in, he set up house, he took a world built to kill him, and he began, slowly and methodically, to make it his. The knife was never just a knife in his hands. I see that now. To us it had been the cheapest item on the wall, a blunt little joke. To him it was a key that opened everything. With it he cut wood, and the wood became a spear, and a frame, and the bones of a shelter. With it he carved traps, clever little snares and deadfalls set along the trails where the small scurrying prey things ran, and soon he had food, real food cooked over his fire. With it he split bone, and the bone became a needle, a fishhook, a second blade. With it he stripped bark into cord, and the cord bound the spear to the shaft and the shelter to the frame and the whole growing architecture of his survival together. One tool, and from that one tool, 100 tools. He grew his own workshop out of the dead world around him, conjuring everything we had offered him on that gleaming wall, not from a stockpile, but from nothing. From dirt and bone and stone, and the patient work of 2 ordinary hands. "He is making the tools," Tomac said one morning, watching Eli lash a sharpened bone to a wooden haft. The old elder's voice had changed, the amusement was gone from it, and something quieter had taken its place. "We offered him the tools, and he refused them, and now he is making his own." "They will be inferior," Veska said. But she was watching very closely now. We all were. Lunch had been forgotten for days. "Of course they are inferior," I said, and then I stopped, because a thought had crept up on me the way the first cold creeps up before a storm. But he can make more. The plasma blade, when its cell dies, is a paperweight. His knife, when it dulls, he sharpens on a rock. The drone, when it breaks, is scrap. His traps, when they break, he rebuilds before breakfast. I set down my broth, which had gone cold and which I had not noticed going cold. "He is not poorer than the others. He is—" I did not finish the sentence. I did not want to finish the sentence. And then the Gorath came, and for a little while none of us had to think about uncomfortable sentences at all. "You will allow me my paragraph for the Gorath now. I promised it earlier, and the beast has earned it. The Gorath is the apex of the crucible, the reason the crucible has teeth at all. It is enormous, a mountain of muscle and armored hide, with a mouth that could close around a candidate and leave nothing behind to bury. It does not feel fear because nothing in its world has ever given it a reason to. It is fast for its size, which is a horrifying thing to learn firsthand, and it had, in the long history of the trial, ended more candidates than any other single feature of that murderous world. When a candidate met the Gorath, the candidate died. That was simply the order of things. The strong ones with their plasma blades had died, the armored ones with their shields had died. The Gorath had eaten them all, indifferent and immense, and gone back to sleep. When it came over the ridge toward Eli Dorn's little camp, vast and unstoppable and hungry, I felt something I had not expected to feel: relief. Because here at last was the thing that would restore order to my universe. Here was the wall the soft creature would finally break against. "This is it," I said, and I am ashamed now of how eager I sounded. "Knife or no knife, fire or no fire, nothing survives the Gorath." Eli Dorn saw the Gorath coming, and he did not run. I have thought about that a great deal. He did not run, and he did not freeze, and he did not throw himself at the beast in some doomed display of courage. He did something far more unsettling than any of those things. He studied it. From the safety of a high rock cleft too narrow for the beast to follow, he watched the Gorath circle and roar and hunt for him, and his flat eyes followed every movement, and you could see behind those eyes the same quiet mechanism turning that had turned when he first stepped off the pod. He was reading it, learning it, taking the most terrifying creature on the entire world and reducing it, patiently, to a problem with a solution. It took him 2 days. 2 days while we watched, barely breathing. He did not fight the Gorath. He was far too sensible to fight the Gorath. Instead he prepared the ground. He dug with a shovel he carved from bone and wood, down in the soft earth of a narrow defile where the beast liked to pass. He set sharpened stakes hardened in his fire, at the bottom of a pit he covered with woven branches and a careful layer of soil. He led the beast over those 2 days with bait and with scent and with maddening glimpses of himself, always just out of reach, training the great stupid mountain of muscle to chase him along one particular path. And on the 2nd day he ran that path one final time, and the Gorath thundered after him, certain at last of its meal, and the ground gave way beneath it. The beast fell. The stakes did their work, and Eli Dorn came down off the rocks with his spear and his knife, calm as a creature finishing a chore, and he ended the thing that had ended 41 candidates before him, methodically, almost gently, without a single tool we had offered, and with every tool he had made himself. The observation deck was silent, no bets were mentioned, no one laughed. We sat in our soft chairs and we watched a soft, slow, unremarkable creature stand over the corpse of our world's apex monster, and not one of us felt comfortable anymore. After that, the commission stopped being a commission and started being a room full of frightened people arguing. "It is luck," Veska said, for perhaps the 10th time pacing the deck. "It is statistical noise. Drop enough candidates and eventually one of them stumbles through. It means nothing." "He killed the Gorath, Veska," Tomak said quietly. "He did not stumble. He hunted it. He laid a trap 2 days in the making and he hunted the Gorath as if it were a rabbit. With a knife," Pol added, faintly. "He started with a knife." "Stop saying that," Veska snapped. But we could not stop saying that because it was the whole terrible point. With a knife? We had built a trial to measure how well a species could use the very best technology we could offer, and a creature had walked into that trial, refused all of it, and outperformed every applicant in our history using a sharpened scrap of metal and the contents of his own skull. And that was when the uncomfortable sentence I had refused to finish days before came back and finished itself in my mind, whether I wanted it to or not. We had it backward, all of us. For 41 trials and 4 centuries we had it exactly backward. We thought the tools were the point. We thought a species proved itself by how well it wielded what it was given. But Eli Dorn had shown us, calmly without ever raising his voice, that a creature who must be given its tools is a creature that can be disarmed. Take away the plasma blade and the warrior is helpless. Take away the shield and the survivor dies. But you cannot take away what Eli Dorn carried, because Eli Dorn carried his workshop inside his own head, and there is no wall, no enemy, no dying world that can strip a creature of the thing it knows how to do. A species like that does not need you to give it anything. A species like that lands on a dead rock with empty hands and builds a civilization out of the dirt, and the only question is how long it takes. "We should speak to him," Tomak said suddenly. The old elder rose from his seat, slow and ancient, and there was something in his face I had never seen there before. "The protocols forbid it. We do not address the candidate during a trial, but I am old and I am tired and I would like to ask the soft creature a question before he leaves." Nobody stopped him. Nobody dared. Pol, trembling, opened the comm channel that no one had opened in the history of the trial. And across the dead green world, in the camp he had built from nothing, Eli Dorn looked up at a voice descending from the sky. "Candidate," Tomak said, and his ancient voice was gentle. "You were offered 100 tools, the finest survival technology in the compact. You refused all of it, and chose a single blade. We must know. Why?" For a long moment Eli Dorn said nothing. He sat by his fire, the knife resting easy in his hand, and he looked up at the green sky as if he could see us behind it, all of us, leaning forward in our soft chairs, desperate for the answer. And when he finally spoke, his voice was quiet and tired and entirely without drama. He did not sound like a creature delivering a speech for the ages. He sounded like a creature explaining something so obvious that he was a little puzzled he had to explain it at all. "Tools break," he said. "They run out, they get lost, they get taken away. I have watched men die clutching the best gear money could buy because the gear was the only thing they had, and the moment it failed them, they had nothing." He turned the knife over in his hand, slow. "A blade I can sharpen, a trap I can rebuild. Fire I can make again tomorrow, and the day after, and every day until I die. You did not offer me survival on that wall. You offered me 100 ways to be helpless the moment one of them broke." He looked back down at his fire. "So I took the one thing that lets me make everything else, and I kept the rest of it up here. and he tapped once the side of his own head. The comm channel went quiet. I translated his words for the council because that is part of my function, and I will tell you that my voice was not entirely steady while I did it, because I understood, finally and completely, the thing we had spent 4 centuries failing to understand. We thought we were testing whether species deserved our gifts. We never once stopped to wonder whether a species might exist that did not need them, that had never needed them, that looked at the most generous offer we could make and saw, correctly, a trap. I looked around the observation deck, at Veska with her arguments gone silent in her throat, at Pol pale and shaking, at old Tomac standing very still with his ancient eyes fixed on the screen. And I knew that every one of us was thinking the same thought, and that none of us wanted to be the one to say it out loud. These creatures arrived last, and they adapt fastest, and we just handed them a map of every world in the compact, and a seat at the table, and the absolute certainty that they are smarter than we are. Eli Dorn completed the trial on the morning of the 9th day. There was no final battle. No desperate sprint to the extraction point with monsters at his heels. That was not his way, I had learned. He simply finished. He banked his fire. He gathered his few handmade possessions, the spear, the cord, the bone tools, the small, clever architecture of his survival. And then he stood, and he stretched, and he walked toward the extraction beacon with the same unhurried calm he had carried into the selection chamber 9 days and a lifetime ago. The knife was still in his hand. Of course it was. He had carried it the whole way, through the first killing night, through the long days of building, through 2 days of hunting the Gorath, through everything the Crucible could throw at a soft and slow and unremarkable creature. That one cheap blade had never once left his grip, and now he carried it out, dull and notched and worn, and somehow more valuable than every gleaming miracle on that wall combined. He stepped onto the extraction pad. He did not look back at the world he had conquered. He did not raise a fist or shout in triumph. He just stood there, waiting to be lifted out, with the patient expression of a creature who has finished a long shift and would now quite like to go home. And as the beam took him, as the soft, slow, unremarkable human dissolved into light and left the Crucible behind him defeated and silent and his, I finally set down my broth for good, and I started very quietly to laugh. Not the warm, cruel laughter of 9 days before, a different laugh. The kind of laugh you laugh when the joke turns out to have been on you the whole time, and you can either laugh or scream, and laughing is the only one that lets you keep your dignity. Because I understood us now, you see. I understood my own ancient, comfortable, complacent species, sitting up here in our soft chairs for 400 years, so certain that strength was measured in what you possessed. We had grown fat on the things we had been given. We had 100 tools for every problem, and somewhere along the way we had forgotten how to make even one of them ourselves. We had become, without ever noticing, the candidates who clutch their gear and die helpless the moment it fails. And these humans, these soft, slow, latecomers with their flat, unsettling eyes, they had walked in carrying nothing, and shown us exactly what we had lost. I turned to the council. Veska, Tomac, Pol, all of them staring at the empty extraction pad as if it might explain itself, and I raised my cold broth in a toast that none of them returned. To Eli Dorn, I said, who took a knife and made a fool of every one of us. I smiled, and it was not entirely a happy smile, and to whatever comes next, because that creature is going home now, to a whole world full of creatures exactly like him, a whole world that looks at an empty rock and sees a home waiting to be built. I drained the cup, and we just told them the door is open. Nobody laughed. Tomac, the oldest of us, the one who had predated half our laws, simply nodded, slow and grave, and turned away from the screen. I keep the file on my desk, even now. Eli Dorn, average strength, no armor, no claws, no venom, the most unremarkable creature ever to apply to the greater compact, and next to that file, where any visitor can see it, I keep one cheap, dull, notched, little knife. We pulled it from the records and I asked to keep it, and to my surprise they let me. People ask me why. Why keep a joke on your desk, Bran? Why honor the thing that humbled you? And I tell them the truth. I keep it to remember the day I learned the difference between a creature that is given everything and a creature that needs nothing. I keep it to remember that the most dangerous thing in the universe is not the sharpest blade or the strongest shield, but the patient, unremarkable mind that can make a blade out of a rock and a home out of a graveyard. And I keep it, mostly, to remind myself never, ever, to laugh at the quiet ones who walk past 100 miracles, and choose the one humble thing that they alone know how to use. Because somewhere out there, right now, a whole species of them is just getting started, and we handed them the map.